Good evening. Ooh, that's better. Calling the meeting to order. All lovely people here. And I want to start by offering a land acknowledgement that we are on the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok people, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for their stewardship of the land over many generations. And I hope we are learning something from their history that we can parlay now and in the future. And now we will turn it over to, I guess, Shelley. Will you be doing the oath of office for our new members?
I am, and we will start with Amy Atchley. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Amy Atchley, do solemnly swear.
I, Amy Ashley, do solemnly swear.
Please put your microphone, there you go. Yes. That I will support and defend
That I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States,
to the Constitution of the United States,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
and I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to
Dan, are you ready? If you want to put your microphone on and
Yes,
raise your
ready.
right hand. I, Dan Ellicamp,
I, Dan Ellicamp,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the United States,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States,
to the Constitution of the United States,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
the Charter of the City of Petaluma,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Amy and Dan, for joining the ranks here. Congratulations. Great to have you. And so, Shelley, will you do the roll call, please?
Atchley, Baker,
Present.
Edminster,
Here.
Ellicamp,
Present?
Garty, Peters,
Here.
Fong, Hudson,
Here.
Shribs.
Here.
So that was a vote of 4 here to 3 present. All right, great. So now we will move on to general public comment. Rihanna, do you want to lead us off for that?
Yes, I will. During general public comment, the public is invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the City Council's, the Climate Action Commission's subject matter jurisdiction and that are not listed on the current agenda. Public comments are limited up to 3 minutes per person, depending on the number of persons wishing to address the commission. Time will be allocated in equal shares totaling no more than 20 minutes. Those wishing to participate in public comment must submit a card and wait to be called on by the chair. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Do we have cards for general public comment?
No, we do not.
Do we have anyone wishing to make general public comment?
We have comment cards for agenda item 2.
Okay.
So, all right. Very good. Then we have no presentations tonight. Approval of minutes are assumed to be approved by acclamation unless there are corrections to be recorded. Any corrections? Looks like none, so we will call that one a done deal. And then we move on to our public hearings and matters for consideration. Item 1 is appointment of Climate Action Commission Chair and Vice Chair. I would like to solicit nominations for the chair seat. Anne?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Ben Peters for chair.
Great. Any other nominations? Seeing none, do we need to take a vote or do we call this done by acclamation?
I believe it's done by vote.
Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor of Ben serving as our new chair, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
We did not have a second.
Oh, I'm out of practice. Okay, I'll second that. I think the vote still stands, right? Everybody say aye again. Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. We had none opposed and I believe no abstentions, right? Okay, Ben, tag, you're it. Would you like to come take this chair? Okay, I guess you'll have to cheat off somebody else now.
Nominations for vice chair?
I would like to nominate my esteemed colleague Ann Baker for vice chair, if she's willing to serve in leadership capacity once again.
I will second that. Can we all do say aye?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, great. Welcome, chair and vice chair.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're on to agenda item number 2. Is that correct? So I guess, Rihanna, you were going to make the statement again for comments? Or, oh, no, we're going to do a discussion, I guess. You want to open that up? Is there a comment or anything?
So the point of having this listed on the agenda is to provide the commissioners with an opportunity to present ideas for future agenda items to be considered.
Okay. I guess let's go from, right to left to give the new member a little bit of time. So we can start right to left, and if people have ideas, we can discuss those, deliberate those, and I'm not sure if we need to vote on them per se, but
So this will not require any actions.
Okay.
This is just a list of potential topics, and the topics for the future will be decided in one-on-one meetings with the chair, the vice chair, and myself. But this just gives us some ideas to discuss during those meetings.
great. Okay. Councilmember Shibbs?
Okay, I did write up a very long list, and I did send it to Rihanna. I'm not sure if, do you want to read off that list that I sent? Because I did not bring it with
I
me.
have that list for my own records that I can use when we are meeting, and then I will provide that list to Shelley to publish for the public.
Oh, okay. If you want to just read it off, just so that we can, so the folks can hear it. Pretty long list.
It is a
I'm
pretty
so
long
shocked.
list. So review and update climate action reports frameworks, track GPAC process and review recommendations and plan, promote new electric appliances and installs with expo and trips to the Santa Rosa Energy Resource, review energy costs and rate structures, survey citizens, especially low-income and disadvantaged, partnerships with local nonprofits, promote blue zones with healthy choices, partner with other committees and commissions, BESS, LI, battery storage and massive solar arrays, roles of PG&E and Sonoma Clean Power, promote micro-mobility and use active transportation ourselves, promote reduced consumerism, plastics, and energy use, explore sea level rise modeling and impacts and repercussions, support water conservation and review water master plans, promote 15-minute communities, review active transportation map and plans, promote open space and interactions with nature, give talks to local organizations, AAUW, Women's Club, Rotary, Village Network, teach class through PSC, Adult School, or Parks and Rec on climate change, support electrification of city facilities, write updates, reports to CityWeb, update newsletter, promote green buildings and LEED lead designs, support PCS and its climate and environment initiatives, do workshop with MIT interactive program in roads. I believe that's it.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll pass it on now for the additions.
Great. What I was thinking we could do, just as a proposal, is that we might want to think about, our year in like 3-4 month sessions and try and focus on 3 major topics for the year, and invite speakers for each of those topics, kind of with the thought that it kind of takes a deep dive for us to get to policy recommendations, and so that over that 4-month period, we'd be hearing from groups at different C4 cities, other groups that have successfully implemented some of the ideas that John just mentioned, and that at the end of that 4-month period, we would go through an exercise where we'd make some policy recommendations to council. And so one of the goals would be to speed up the rate at which we're making policy recommendations to council. And it seems to be from the past is when we get down to making policy recommendations is when more people start coming to the meetings and paying attention. We'll see if that would play out or not, but that's a thought. So my suggestion for those 3 major topics would be mode shift, so switching to active transportation, promoting public transportation, leaning into Cool Pedluma's work, publicizing fare-free transportation for students and working with schools about carpooling and anti-idling. And the second topic would be adapting our street systems to green streets. So looking at consolidating all the planning efforts that are going on. We have SDAT and PBAC efforts, and also the commission. And so really kind of coming up with a prioritized green corridors plan that focuses on our disadvantaged communities. And working with Relief on urban forestry, folding those into our green streets, and the 15-minute commuter idea. So really diving into how do we reshape our, kind of 60s era street system design that's not really serving us anymore, and so how can we start to shift it? And then the last topic, and any order is fine, is adaptation. So really starting to push adaptation further into the conversation as we're seeing worldwide really intense impacts from climate change multiplying. I think that adaptation conversation needs to come forward. So talking about effects of extreme heat and flooding here in town and how we ameliorate those things, really asking the Department of Public Works to step forward and perhaps have a climate point person who can really start to coalesce the information on threats to our storm drain system, and, our need for sea level rise adaptation and urban heat and cooling centers. So those are three topics I was considering that we might do in 3-4 month segments. We have some ongoing work that ad hocs have been doing on sequestration and alternative refrigerants that I think should keep going forward. And obviously, we need to keep looking at the general plan update and the climate action adaptation plan when those come forward. So those would kind of fit into that idea of kind of 4-month topics. 4 months of focusing on one topic, I think, would help us really generate some great policy ideas. Thanks. Sorry, that was a little long.
I'll be a bit more brief, and I apologize. I'm not sure if this commission has looked at this before, but I'd like to see us focus on promoting level 1 charging in the building codes for multifamily development. So that'd be carports, garages, and also in public parking structures and parking lots as well. Because there's so many people that don't live in a single-family home, and it would give them an opportunity to drive an electric vehicle and be able to charge overnight at a lower rate of power. That's it.
Thank you. I guess one of the first couple things I'd like to do is a discussion on the ad hocs. As the vice chair mentioned, there are some existing ad hocs. There's the potential for new ad hocs. I think at the next meeting or the next 2 meetings, we can come with some ideas on, how do we want to meet outside of this, if we so choose. That's also in relation to Councilmember Shribs. One of your topics was micro-mobility. And at the transit meeting, which was at 4 p.m. today, so it's, they voted to keep the meeting for transit at 4 p.m. So if you want to spend all Thursday in this room, I certainly did. It was interesting. And they formed a micro-mobility ad hoc because they do have budget to start a micro-mobility program. And so my recommendation is, if you are curious, to reach out to the transit manager and try and join the micro-mobility ad hoc, and then we have a little bit of more unity between transit and climate. Similarly, at the PBAC meeting last week, there was a couple new ad hocs that they formed, somewhat transit related, and so I would encourage us to, as part of the ad hoc discussion, just make sure there is a representative of the Climate Action Commission, which can attend some of these ad hoc groups. There also was some discussion on transit about more of a joint subcommittee, which I think was more of a formal Brown Act group. The previous one was the bike share program with SMART, which had a bit of a false start, but I hear is getting going again, and so they might revive that. But under the entire topic of micro-mobility, I do think there's big climate impacts there. And, I agree that kind of ties in with the overall mode shift thing. I won't speak for Dave, but at least in our discussions on the transportation ad hoc, 70% mode shift is sort of in our stated plan to meet our carbon neutral by 2030 goal. And so, 70% mode shift is a big lift, right? And so I certainly think that mode shift is, something that we could spend several meetings or, several months on and deliver maybe some more concrete policy ideas. I also really like the idea of sort of focusing certain meetings or certain, time periods of our work on specific presentations, because, when this commission was formed, the room was full and there was a lot of excitement, and the excitement sort of went in all number of different directions. And, we're fortunate to have a couple community members attend, but when there is a certain topic and the meeting focuses on that topic and we can get multiple presenters to present on that topic, we can at least fill the room with presenters, right? And then we can cross-pollinate the ideas between the presenters and share that with the public and, get the momentum building again, at least in terms of public engagement in this forum. And I do love the other two ideas that the vice chair mentioned on the green streets. And I mean, there's the SSTAT work, there's the PBAC work. And so, that's, I think, something that this committee hasn't focused on as much. It's, we've done some great work in the built environment and buildings and that. And I think that's some of that work will continue. And, I think focusing on, some of the green streets work that has been done elsewhere can be done here. And the last one, adaptation. I mean, that's, I can tell you at the city operations ad hoc, where me and the former chair met with the city multiple times, and we're currently working on the climate action plan. And there is a climate adaptation plan that I believe is a requirement from the state. And that work has not started. And the current forum for adaptation, at least my understanding of that, is the GPAC. And I believe if it hasn't been canceled, the next GPAC meeting is partially related to adaptation, possibly focused on sea level rise. But I do think this commission can support the work of adaptation with the city, both through a formal adaptation plan and also through some joint work at GPAC and, just in terms of meetings we might need to have to deal with extreme heat, next month. And so, it's a real topic. It's, certainly something that I'm interested in. And, I would like to advocate for that as well. Again, sea level rise is something that you mentioned. And the last couple things I'll say, mostly based on your list thus far, blue zones. I think that's a super interesting one. That was kind of on my list as well as, how do we share what's going on with blue zones? That's something that maybe not all members of the public are familiar with. And so this body, as a way to promote sort of, climate action, I think the blue zones, a presentation by Blue Zones, perhaps with some other presenters, would be a great forum. And I guess I'll wait for the members of the public to speak, and then we can, sort of provide commentary based on their feedback as well.
I didn't really have much prepared, but as a high school student, I think it'd be valuable to talk about different modes of transportation for people that don't have access to vehicles at the moment, like especially students who aren't able to drive yet or things like that, that the bus systems can be really confusing and difficult to navigate, that oftentimes a lot of the walking trails that PCS has labeled as safe walking paths are not actually safe at all. Like over Washington Street, over the bridge, that was labeled as a path to school for elementary school students, and that doesn't seem very safe. So I guess just talking about the ways for transportation for people who don't have access to vehicles, I guess, would, yeah.
All right. Glasses on, glasses off. Glasses on, glasses off. I have a somewhat short list, I guess. The first one is kind of a broad suggestion, which is partly in response to a couple of the comments that some of you have already made, which is I think that we do have, if not a need, a compelling rationale to coordinate more closely with other city bodies, both official city bodies and some unofficial ones, but that are obviously pursuing work that's very important to the city's climate agenda. Cool Petaluma, the SSTAT group, Sustainable Design Assistance Team, Relief, green and safe streets, and blue zones. So, and as well as all the other, formal city commissions, committees, and boards. I think in order to do that successfully, my thought is that we've done a lot of work in ad hocs, and it's maybe not realistic to both coordinate effectively with those groups and run ad hocs, because we all have limited bandwidth. So I'm thinking it could be maybe an alternative mode of operation for us to take on responsibilities to coordinate, formally liaise with some of those groups by attending their meetings and reporting back. And I know, John, as council member, you do this sort of thing very, very regularly, and I think it's really valuable in fostering communication across bodies. So, the right hand knows what the left is doing, and we have better opportunities to work in ways that reinforce one another and not reinvent the wheel. So that's a sort of broad process suggestion. Topically, a couple things I think are important. The old saying, if you're a carpenter, everything looks like a hammer. Well, I'm in the building industry, so that remains a very prominent focus for me. I would like to be kept well apprised of what the city plans to do in light of the Ninth Circuit ruling about decarbonization regulations, and also to really get a little bit more aggressive on the question of existing building decarbonization. And I think part of that is we are going to need to set carbon targets for city operations and activities that the city controls, including construction within city jurisdiction. I actually have a colleague who works for a large architecture firm who's been working on a methodology. I've also been working on a methodology, and we're trading ideas and probably going to present a paper at a conference next summer. So there's work in progress. There's no off-the-shelf method for doing this, but at least there's sort of some prototypes to be looked at, because we can't reach a target if we don't understand what the target is and how we get to it by allocating it among all the things that the city does that produce emissions. And then finally, well, I'll leave it at that. I guess one other thing. I think in terms of all of the city coordination and communications, I think we would be more effective as an educating and advocacy body if we were more visibly in communication with the council. And I would like to see members of the commission appear before council at meetings when we have things to convey, recommendations and so forth, rather than just, say, writing an opinion and passing it along. I think it would be more effective to appear in public at the mic and share those thoughts, recommendations, and so forth directly. That's it. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump right in. One thing that I think would be valuable for me, but also probably for the whole city and this whole commission, is to have a very clear goal statement of like what it is exactly that we're trying to do. I know like we make policy recommendations to council, and I just heard that we're education and advocacy body, but some kind of clear sort of point in, that we're aiming for, so that whenever we're wondering, which way do we go, like we know that we're sort of in the direction of our goals. And maybe all of you are clear on that, but I'm not. So maybe it's just a matter of you telling me what it is. But it might be something like a conversation where we establish, exact mission statement or something of that sort. I think a lot of things have already been said, and so I don't want to double up on anything that's already been said. But I would say, how can we create a sustainable micro-community here in Petaluma? What are the things that we, if we have, I think, the most ambitious carbon neutral goal, like that I know of. And besides carbon neutrality, there's a lot of other things that we need to be doing to be able to adapt and mitigate climate change. Just everybody here knows the things, but like just to list a few, energy, obviously, transportation, water, fire. I would say land and nature. I heard somebody say that, like open spaces, community spaces, food, local and sustainable food, materials and products that we're using in our city, and I would say also integrating ourselves into the community, and to increase public engagement, and along with that, sort of promoting businesses and organizations that are aligned with what we're doing in a public space to get people aware of what's going on, because we have a lot of pretty amazing things going on. Relief is one of them. Daily Acts is pretty amazing. So I think that lifting those people up and supporting those people are already doing a lot of really good things in our city, and getting that momentum within the community, I think is really valuable in all the ways. I guess community being sort of a key word to like everything that I'm saying, that I think we're going to be more effective the more people are involved. So however we can do that. Thanks.
Thank you. As a reminder, and to the new committee members, typically when an item is agendized, sometimes there's a staff report, and then there is committee discussion and questions, and then the item is opened up to members of the public, and then there's another round of committee comment where some sort of direction and sometimes a vote occurs. And so now we're at the point of members of the public. And now I think before I call them, there's a bit of prompting that Rhiannon will do, and then we will call up members of the public.
Those wishing to participate in public comment must submit a card to the chair and wait to be called on by the chair. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. And the first speaker will be...
The first speaker will be Matt McGuire.
Hello, commissioners. This is kind of, deja vu for me being back here in the chambers. It's been 22 years since I sat on that side. I think you all received the email I sent you regarding phasing out the burning of carbon fuel at the stock car races. It's really interesting to hear your comments, both from the specific, pointed, small-scale stuff. And I think Commissioner Edminster, you were, showing up to the City Council is a very powerful thing for you folks to do to deliver your message. John, you're going to keep these people busy for years. But it's good to see that. I think it's no secret that both the city and the state and the country are way far behind on achieving their climate goals. And we are in desperate situation. We see the world on fire now, with the flooding in Vermont. You can just list it for hours, go through the list every day. It's catastrophic, and we need to do something. And so the letter that I wrote with my friend Stan Gold, it was actually Stan's impetus to suggest a phasing out of the burning of carbon fuels at the stock car races, is a small, specific thing that you guys can presumably support, agree upon, and recommend to the City Council, hopefully in person. Obviously you have your work cut out for you. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, when we talk about the urgency that we need to act upon. We've as I said in my email, it's like you've heard complaints from people probably that are race car supporters who say nobody can afford to get an electric vehicle. I've been driving a Chevy Bolt for 6 years now. You can buy them for under $30,000 brand new. If people wanted, if they want to show off their racing skills, everybody have the Chevy Bolt races at the stock cars and see who's the best driver, right? So those are, this is just something that the kind of thing that I think the commission needs to take action on and address and hopefully agree to recommend to the council. Obviously, the council, is the deliberative body, but we need to do everything we can. Small things, big things, everything in between. This is a very tangible thing. I think it gives the people who are race car proponents, who are very devoted to their sport, an opportunity to, see the writing on the wall and actually maybe even feel good about helping us to accomplish something that is so desperately needed. So that's one thing. I mean, and obviously you guys have just a ton of things that are, huge issues that I hope to see you do address and hopefully can take action on. But that is one that, and I'll tell you right now, I'm a neighbor to the fair. I personally hate the stock car races. I've hated them for 35 years. I had a Marin realtor, didn't know that went on, learned the hard way, have put up with it for all this time. But I think now it's time to call a halt to that and say, look, we need to recognize the writing on the wall and take some action. So
That'll be time, sir.
if you have any questions.
The next speaker card I have is for Stan Gold.
Thank you. Sometimes the things that are most obvious are the things we don't think.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. 1 moment, sir. We're working on our timer. We need to get our timer up and running.
I do what? Well, sometimes things that are the most obvious are the most obviously overlooked. And one of them has been the spewing week after week, whenever the races are run, of combustion of carbon fuels. And it's not only here, it's all over the country. This kind of racing is very, very big business, brings in a whole lot of money, and it's not going to be easy to overcome. We can do it stepwise, and now, for the first time in a long time, we have a golden opportunity. The city is taking over the fair, and from what I understand, they plan to continue the rentals of the tenants for at least 3 years. That being the case, the raceway would be kept on for 3 years as well, I'm assuming. And this is a methodology for phasing the raceway out without it being too painful for them. By phasing the raceway out, I want to make it clear, we're not against automobile racing. Not at all. What we are in opposition to is the poisoning of our great-grandchildren's grandchildren so they don't have a planet. That's what we're against. And once you get rid of carbon-based fuels, you solve that issue. Then they can go on racing. So as an alternative method, we said, okay, for the first year, you've been put on notice, you can keep your gasoline engines, keep on spewing the poisons. But know that the second year, 1/3 of your racing is going to have to cut back to electric. For the second year of that continued lease, 2/3 are going to have to be cut back to electric. And in the third year, when your lease is up, all of your racing is going to have to be electric or not at all. And we hope that you will study the issue, find out about how much is being put into the air, agree with us in this manner, and make your positive recommendations to the City Council to do as we suggest. Note that we are not suggesting any new policy. The policy that we're working on already exists. It's a policy of the current city council. We are merely suggesting an implementation phase in one area in support of this policy. So you're not bucking the council on what they want to do already. You're just calling to their attention an area where they have not looked before. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the members of the public for providing your comments. Now is the committee discussion on this agenda topic. If anyone has any comments based on what members of the public or other commissioners have mentioned, and I personally would like to at least have some discussion in terms of the next meeting, as well as, broader meetings. And if anyone has any particular impetus for next meeting's topic, please say that.
And
Yeah.
so that's something that you, Ann, and I will discuss
Yeah.
in our 101. And at this point, we don't actually discuss public comments. We'll be moving into committee comment, and that's about what committee members do outside of the meetings that fit within the purview of the Climate Action Commission. So it's an update of outside actions that you take.
Great. Councilmember Shribs, would you prefer to go again?
Okay. Okay, I'm now on the Ag and Open Space Advisory Committee. So I've attended just one or two meetings since they started. They're not meeting again this coming month, but in this last meeting, there was a presentation on their current, it's called the Matching Grants Program, which they've had on for several years, but they're in a new cycle that they're working on. And one of our Petaluma groups, Petaluma Bounty, submitted an application. And of the applications, it was the highest ranked. And they're going to attempt to support that with a $2 million request from their board, which is also this Board of Supervisors, for $2 million that would be partially to help purchase the land so that they could actually take control of it in perpetuity. And the reason why this got started in the first place is apparently there is a developer that would like to buy the land and put up some development. And so this is to sort of like prevent that from happening and also keep Bounty functioning and running as what they're doing. And I just did see that Bounty did help I was at the Montero opening today, and Bounty had done the gardens for them. So lots of tomato plants are they're about to produce on their property for our Montero, which is the housing for our homeless. So we'd like to be able to support that, and I'm hoping that that folks from City Council and also from Bounty, when this comes up to the Board of Supervisors, which are also the Board of Directors for Ag and Open Space, that we can keep moving that forward. There is going to be an additional $6 million to be acquired to actually do the whole program for it all to work. So it's because the developer came in and made a pretty nice offer on the land, and the landowner said, I'd rather keep Bounty there. So we got to kind of match what's going on. And hopefully that goes on through. But right now it was the highest ranked of the 8 programs. So good chance we'll get the full $2 million at this point. So we're working on that. Other things Ag and Open Space is doing, they've been slow in acquisitions the last few years, but right now they've got 25 active projects that they're in the process of in acquisition, some step of that, and of which 12 are actively in acquisition. And they're reaching the final stages of all the paperwork with the Chandler Ranch, which is on the coast, which is a fabulous jewel to go to. It's actually been used for horse riding and tourism at the moment. But that'll be a definite jewel in the hat of everything. But there is lots going on, and there's several of the current matching grants. Bounty is one of them. It's all urban open spaces. So there's some in several cities, for everything from Guerneville, Sebastopol, Santa Rosa, all have public meeting spaces that are being supported right now, which is really nice. And we pushed them. They were only going to go with $4 million, and of total grants, and we pushed them and said, okay, we want to go to 6, and then now we're kind of pushing for 8. So hopefully, we're going to pretty push them to push the board, the full board, the decision makers, to go to a full $8 million in the matching grant program rather than the original just 4. So we'll give that an effort. So that's one of the good things that's really happening. Other things, I was at the Blue Zones meeting, as a few other folks were here, and so we'll continue to support that, and that's for a healthy environment. It requires lots of folks walking in nature and doing things with nature. Daily Acts has another grant that they received on land resiliency. So they've gotten a water conservation type grants working with rain catchment systems, but also this land resiliency grant. So they're heading toward, with the 2 grants together, probably over 100 projects will be done within the city over the next couple of years. So that's a very positive thing that's going on. One thing that I found out from the Friends of Schollenberger Park was that the Dutra is trying another round of legal maneuvering to put their asphalt plant at the south side of the city. So that fight looks like it's going to be back on again, and so we need to be thinking about, do we really want an asphalt plant at the beginning of our, in the entrance to our city? Let's see, a couple of the meetings right now, several of the water committees are on summer break because hard to get folks to, everyone's on vacation right now. So there's several of the committees in water that are not meeting right now. Let's see, for the, one of the reasons why I was busy today is I was finishing putting up an AC system into my house. So I was investigating I went to the the expo that was conducted down at the Lou Casey Community Center. And after talking to the heat pump folks down there and what could be done and to our houses, so I was looking at doing new construction versus old construction, what that's like. So I said, I investigated that myself. It says, okay, so I asked the folks to come in and give me a quote on putting heat pumps at my house. Now, originally 32 years ago, I just put the furnace in. We never thought we would ever need air conditioning. But right now, with worldwide temperatures breaking records 3 days in a row and looking like it's going to be breaking records all summer long now, and even locally here, we're starting to heat up. So I says, okay, so I finally need to put some maybe air conditioning. We've got Sonoma Clean Power at our house. And so the heat pumps, but to convert over the system I have now, costs anywhere from $15,000 for a single room to over $35,000 to do the whole house, just to get air conditioning in. Huge price tag on that. So we opted to opt for, we'll just do a single room, and I'm just going to use a plug-in, which is just found a new, an inverter air conditioning system, a little higher priced, but as a single window unit, just so that we can survive in the house on the hottest days for those 20 hot days that we're having this summer. So, which concerns about new construction, great, we want to put everything in. Forcing everyone to do old construction, I'm a little concerned about that. Trying to do a conversion packages in there, we're going to have to use some heavy subsidies if we're going to be promoting that. So it's just wanted to raise my awareness and to share with you some of the research that I just did on that. Then there was today there was a webinar on offshore windmills, wind turbines, and apparently the U.S. government is supporting this, and there's already projects going on the East Coast that are being developed. Just to give you a size of the quantity, these are large arrays with maybe dozens of wind turbines within, to be about 20 miles offshore, whole slew of them being put in and then connected in with wired in, coming down, and they're stable. They'd be floating on the waters. And so there was presentations on what that might look like and how much energy comes in. And there needs to be a port nearby, and that's the most expensive part of it. There's going to have to be a port where they actually construct, put them out, bring them back in, do the repair work. And these port systems, along with producing these things to put up the array, they're talking a minimum of $100 million for a single location, and upwards probably $300 million, maybe even billions of dollars by the time they get built. And it's going to take, with the planning and everything, up to 2030 for these wind turbines to come in. One of the places, Humboldt, is actively looking at it now. Also, Richmond is considering it. They've got space. They've got a port space that they could use. The highest winds are in Humboldt area. That's where the best advantage is for wind turbines, but we do have some locations right off our coast here. So it would be possible that we're using the Richmond location. We could have several plants out there producing and bringing the energy in. And this is going to be hugely promoted financially and politically over the next few years, I believe. But we're looking at about a 2030 for the first online system to be able to come into play. There are many issues. There's talks from tribal issues. We're talking about concerns there about who's in control and where the ports are and the lines of disturbance of the fish, wildlife, and lakes. There's also concerns about the depth. There's 3,000-foot depth going on. So there is large goals in mind here, large needs, and anyway, just to be aware that that is now looking at off our coast here in California. There's already several cities looking at this as cooperating with the federal and state governments to make this happen. So just to make sure we're aware of that coming down the line. Okay, that's my report for today.
Yeah, around the horn.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a great list. I'm just going to offer that I was on the RCPA Natural Systems and Sequestration Committee, and the RCPA kind of gathered input in 3 different committees. I think Ann Edminster was on the buildings one. And they went out this summer with the survey because they wanted to have a measure on the 2024, am I right, ballot, either a parcel tax or a quarter-cent sales tax to raise money for climate mitigation and adaptation. And they sent out the results of the survey today, and they said that it wasn't negative, but it wasn't strong enough public support to think that those measures would pass. Because in order to get a sales tax or a parcel tax approved, you have to have a 2/3 majority in the state of California. And so they were kind of getting, 56% support or but they didn't get to 66% or anywhere close. So I think, unfortunately, what they're going to do is go back out to these different committees and see if they can sharpen the messaging around what the tax measures would be for, and kind of re-examine when that could happen. So anyway, that's kind of a setback because the RCPA was really looking at quite a sum of money, like, I don't know, $33 million or something a year, anywhere from 15 to 33 million, I think, a year, depending on which approach. The sales tax approach was a little more positive. And, some of the opposition was just no tax, no new taxes. So those were kind of less persuadable people. But I think that's probably something else we could think about, is how to clarify for the public what kind of investments are really valuable investments right now in terms of mitigation and adaptation, kind of help that conversation move forward to a more positive result.
Any comments? No? I have a couple, I guess, to tag on the RCPA thing. So tomorrow, the 14th, the Climate Action Advisory Committee meets at 11:30. And so that is sort of the county's version of this body. And so I have attended those in the past. I'm sure they're going to talk about exactly what Ann is talking about, is, they have had a lot of focus on this funding for climate. That's been sort of their singular focus. And, I imagine there's going to be some discussion and direction at that meeting. Also, just if folks that live in the county, I do think there is a vacancy to represent District 2 on that body. And so if you do know anyone that is in this district that has an interest in participating in somewhat of a similar climate action committee, you could encourage them to do that. I don't exactly know the process for how David Rabbit would go appointing that vacancy, but I'm sure if someone was motivated enough, they could get in that seat. Those meetings have tended to be a lot less formal than this one, and I think even the last one was on Zoom, even though, meetings are required to be back in person. So I'm curious to see if that is still the case. But that meeting is tomorrow, and then the next RCPA board meeting is the same as the SCTA meeting in August. I guess related to Councilmember Shrib's comment on the offshore wind, that reminded me of the local coastal plan. So the local coastal plan that's been around for, over 50 years, I think now. They sort of update it in 20-year cycles roughly, and the next cycle is coming up this round with a major vote on the 17th by the Board of Supervisors. And so there are different elements of the local coastal plan. Some of it is related to zoning. There is some controversy, I guess I'll say, about some elements and plans for it. So I won't necessarily speak to what that controversy is, but if you are interested, certainly you can educate yourself, and some of the more conservation-minded organizations are encouraging people to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting on the 17th. One element of the local coastal plan, which had some staff recommendation and the Board of Supervisors chose not to really address, related to offshore wind facilities, which I found pretty interesting. I do think the current position of the staff recommendation is to discourage the development of offshore wind facilities. And so, if the plan continues as is, then, our offshore wind facility might be in Richmond or Humboldt County. And, the local coastal plan might make that a lot harder to do here. So interesting little tidbit there. And the last and final thing for me is, again, the transit committee. They just met today and advanced the zero emission bus plan, which was really exciting. So they have most of the funding to electrify our entire bus fleet. They're going to buy several new electric buses. I think this year they're actively working on the EV charging for that now. I know during the staff comment, there's, we have our own kind of city fleet electrification plan. I did make a comment to sort of make sure those two things are in sync, just because the current plan calls for all of the bus charging to happen at the transit center, which does make sense, but I do think there should be a backup plan. If there's some kind of accident or emergency at the transit center, we should really have a second plan to charge our bus fleet. And so I made that comment. I think that direction was clear, but exciting news that, we are certainly going well on our way towards electrifying our transit fleet. And again, the idea of encouraging more students to ride the bus is a good one. And so I will certainly look forward to trying to do everything we can to educate students during, during back to school next month. And so if we can get them there right then and there, we can get a little bit more bus riders, and, the next year and next year, next year. And so, certainly something I'm going to be focused on, at least until, back to school and then beyond that. So thank you.
Well, Anne, thank you for covering the RCPA news. That was on my list as well. Let's see, last month, mid-June, I attended the California Climate and Energy Forum in Santa Rosa. That was a 2-day event. Rihanna was there as well. And I'm sure you found, as I did, there was lots of really fertile discussion, mostly among local governments, about what various things are happening in their communities. So I still haven't distilled my notes from that, but thought I'd mention it. And I think there's some worthwhile things that can be brought forward as ideas for Petaluma from that. That's an annual conference I have not attended before. I was quite favorably impressed with it. I would probably attend again. And last week, I attended a webinar about hybrid heat pump systems, which was interesting to me because I have a friend here in town who needed a new heating and cooling system, and I tried to talk her into heat pumps, and the vendor ended up talking her into a hybrid system. I really didn't know that much about them, so this was very helpful. The short version is that a hybrid system entails pairing a heat pump with an existing furnace and using the furnace primarily to do the job of blowing the air around through the duct system and providing supplemental heat, but that the heat pump will do most of the heating and, of course, all of the cooling since the furnace can't do cooling. So it's there was a really great analysis done. First of all, a practical discussion by an installer in the Pacific Northwest, and then expert research reported on by a couple of academics from UC Davis Western Cooling Center, where they've done, research on cooling systems for, decades, and provided a lot of, hard data on the relative merits from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective of the different systems in different climates, in different building types, for example. So that's valuable information. When I get the slide deck, I will share it with others, and I think there'll be a recording as well. So it's a little bit geeky, but definitely nitty-gritty information that folks can use when we're challenged with situations such as John encountered in his own home. And it also occurred to me when you were speaking about it that window units don't work well with casement windows. They only work well with single hung and double hung, which is kind of an interesting conundrum, something to be thought about. So those are my reports. And just a comment, I know we're not discussing the comments from the public today, but I liked the idea of things that we might bring forward to council to say, this is consistent with policy you've already adopted. Here are some specific measures. Just wanted to plant that notion. Thanks. That's it for me.
Great. I think staff, Councilmember Shrimps.
Well, let's go over staff, just in a point of order, just as checks on the procedures as we moved forward in our procedures. I think in the topics where we were just, we were talking about topics for our coming year or two. And one of the procedures that we went through was we had, each individual had our say as to what we were thinking, and we had the public, but we did not get the chance to actually talk about each other and discuss what we thought about other people's ideas. So that we missed the discussion part of after our presentations to each other. And I was just wondering if we wanted, after this we wanted to go back and do that part, because I think we missed that part of actually discussing each other's ideas that were being presented.
Yeah, no, I think I tried to do that, and Rihanna said that was perhaps we would have a meeting on that first, and then maybe agendize that as more of a formal report where we could take more specific action. Or Rihanna, do you want to comment on that? I'm happy to reopen that.
So this agenda topic was just to list ideas for future potential topics so that when I'm meeting with the chair and the vice chair, we have some fertile ground to work with when we're setting agenda topics.
Okay, I just checked see if there was an appropriate time to for any feedback from each other on our ideas.
I am open to feedback, so if you want to, please.
If you'd like to give
Okay.
feedback.
Anyway, so Chair Peters, your idea of the adaptation part that we may need to do sounds like probably what I would say the most critical thing we need to start on, because the framework is the philosophically and long-term strategy-wise and vision. But an adaptation, which is everything that we listed here, is an adaptation that we need to step forward with. And so I'd like to see if maybe move that up the line as to start an ad hoc committee with adaptation and really look at what we can do right now to step toward our goals of the framework, and that would be a continuing theme we would continue to work on. So having an adaptation ad hoc committee. I don't know if it's been created or not, but that was something that I would support seeing happen. And that way, all the things we talked about would be coming basically out of that as how do we now take our next steps? And so everything that we suggested are all next steps, one after the other, but setting up some sort of adaptation, whether to do it as a subcommittee or whether to do it as a full committee, might be something to consider. Anyway, I liked that particular idea that was spoken with everyone. Everyone had very good contributing ideas for that, but that seemed to be the focal point that we could actually work through all the other ideas together as just something to work on. Anyway, that was just something I just thought I want to support you on what you had said. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to staff comment.
Okay, so this is the first time I've created some slides for my staff updates, but maybe it'll be helpful rather than me just blurting out a long list. Here's some visuals for you all. So city projects and initiatives update. We have the EV charging infrastructure master plan. And just as a side note, the transit master plan was a part of the overall master plan, but they needed to move things along much faster than we did. And by separating it out, so it's still in the same contract. Well, it's not the same contract, but it's the same consultant and they use the same bid. That allowed us to decrease the price of the citywide master plan, and it allows them to move forward faster. But we are still doing the same work with the same consultant. So the site visits for the city facilities are scheduled for next week. We'll be doing site visits for 20 facilities within 4 days. So we'll have a very busy week ahead. Floating solar consultants are moving into 60% the 60% design set, which is expected to be completed by the end of August. So that's exciting. And then I am partnering with Cool Petaluma, and we're working on an electrification listening session for contractors. And the tentative date, well, confirmed date at this point is August 28th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the LaCasey Community Center. Climate Ready partnered with Petaluma Leadership and purchasing and will be installing 5 bike fix-it stations around Petaluma. Let's see, current proposed locations include the Water Street Ped Bridge, Lynch Creek Trail at LaCasey Park, Prince Park, the Mary Isaac Center, and the downtown Smart Station. And for information, you can either contact myself or Dan Barry from Petaluma Leadership. We were recently notified that we are going to be awarded $275,000 for a resource recovery program, and this will target the downtown area, transit locations, and parks. And this will be tied in with the CIP project, the beautification for the downtown area. So you will see trash cans replaced in the downtown area. There will be extensive community outreach done for this project. I am in the process of designing a community survey because I really want feedback from Petaluma residents on which designs they want to see in the downtown area. And there will also be a K through 12 art contest associated with this resource recovery program, and artwork will be temporarily installed on the recycling bins that you will start seeing pop up in the downtown area. More on this will come in the coming months as we start implementing this program. And then this is where we will in the future put upcoming agenda items, tentative, subject to change, but the general plan update is coming down the pipeline, specifically the sea level rise maps, and then also the climate action and adaptation plan will be coming in the next few months as well. And that is it for my updates.
Great. I think that ends all of the agenda items. The meeting is adjourned.